Frederick Douglass was an African-American male who was born sometime around 1818. His actual birthday is unknown, which was very common for African Americans of that time. He's best known for being a well-spoken advocate and leading force for the abolitionist movement. He also did things like teach other slaves how to read, be an anti-slave lecturer, a writer, and a powerful orator. When selecting my topic, I was immediately drawn to the abolitionist movement. It is such a powerful movement in history that I wasn't properly educated on. And in doing my research, I kept seeing Frederick Douglass's name pop up, and so I decided to look into him further and chose to use him as my research topic, but only up until 1860. So not anything that he did after that, but in the time frame that was allowed for this course. I chose him because of how influential and important he was to this movement, and because I wanted to learn more. He was one of the most prominent leaders in the fight to end slavery. He used his literary and oratory skills to explain firsthand experience of what it was like to be a slave, and which was used and was greatly important in sparking a conversation and changing the way people thought about slavery. In 1834, he boarded a train using a sailor's uniform and documents of an already free African American in order to flee where he was being enslaved. From then on, he got married, had 5 kids, and begun what we know of his legendary career. In 1843, he became a part of the American Anti-Slavery Society, of what they called 100 Conventions, which was a project of a 6-month-long tour where he gave speeches throughout the United States to advocate against slavery. During this tour, he was exposed to a lot of physical abuse by those who opposed the movement itself and anti-slavery people. In 1845, he published the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave. In this book, he describes his experience in details, using a lot of ethos and pathos to appeal to his audience and their emotions in order to change the way that people thought about slavery, and exposing the more intimate details, the gory details of what it was like. This book was very important for exposing what it was like to people who may not have known, but also it was powerful for disproving the argument that African Americans were not as smart or capable as white people, which was a common belief and was used as an argument as to why African Americans should be enslaved. In 1847, he began publishing his very own newspaper. It was based on anti-slavery or the abolitionist movement, like advocation for that. And in this paper, he also was an advocate and representative for the women's rights movement. A popular phrase that he wrote in his paper was, "Right is of no sex, Truth is of no color. God is the Father of us all, and we are all brethren. In 1852, he gave his very popular speeches, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. And this was very powerful because of the emotional and very real description of what it was like for African Americans of this time, and how, which linked into his argument that everyone deserves to be free and everyone deserves the same human rights. Which is one excerpt from that is that a day that reveals to him more than all other days of the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim, which just describes how African Americans were not allowed this freedom. They were able to see it and see other people experience it, but it was just a reminder of how they were enslaved and how they weren't free, which was what the 4th of July was supposed to be celebrating, was freedom. All in all, Frederick Douglass was a leader for the abolitionist movement due to his literary and oratory prowess, as well as his passion for equality and civil liberties. In his time, he gave a voice to those who couldn't speak for themselves in a fight for freedom, liberty, and justice for all, which was just equal representation by the Constitution, which was what everybody deserves. And while he continued to be relevant in history well past 1860, the success of the abolitionist movement was one of the most impactful things in history during this time, and it is still astounding and powerful to this day. Thank you.